What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you 10 potential breakout candidates for the 2021-2022 NFL season. I've been thinking about it, marinating some names, and I'm ready to get it out there and ready to talk to you about these 10 potential breakout stars. And hey, it's only 10. I thought about maybe doing a player for every team. That was kind of a lot. Didn't want to make too long of a video, but if I didn't talk about your favorite team or a player on it, comment who you think could be a breakout candidate for this upcoming season. And maybe if you want to see me do all 32 teams and a breakout star for each of them, comment it down below and maybe I can make that happen. If there's enough interest for it, I'd be glad to do so. Also, when we go through this is in no particular order. This is not me saying this is the #1 breakout star, kind of guy, and this is number 10. This is just 10 players I thought of. And some of these also are up for debate, like the last person we'll talk about. Some may say, well, like, duh, he could be a breakout player. And then some might see it as a contentious point of, like, he's not that good. So, bear with me. Some of these names will vary based off of, like, how much of a breakout player or if they're due for a good season. So, with all that said, comment your thoughts down in the comment section. I want to have a discussion with you. Do you think these players will break out next year, or do you think it's a long shot and they're just going to continue being, rosterable type of NFL guys? I'd love to have your thoughts. And one final note before we get into these top 10 players. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button. It would mean the world to me. And if you're new to the channel, like football, like sports in general, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And of course, comment all your thoughts down below. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about it. We got a couple of second-year wide receivers that we'll start with. First of which being Michael Pittman. Look, I was a big fan of his coming out of USC. Also, with the stats you'll see on there, some players will have career stats, some players will have season stats. If you only see career in there, those are career numbers. And if you only see season in there, it's just season. So, like last season. So, just to get that, cleared for any confusion that might come up. But Michael Pittman, super solid route runner, fits the prototypical X, and what you want in a possession guy. And also the Colts this offseason just didn't really address the position, right? Like, that to me says they have faith in him becoming a #1 wide receiver. Had they gone out there and gotten Kenny Golladay, his role automatically goes from being the #1 down to the #2, which I think is still a good enough offense to where he'd be okay, but they drafted up at the top of the second round. They didn't go out there and find somebody else. They just brought T.Y. Hilton back. They're also betting on Paris Campbell staying healthy. And they got an upgrade at the QB position in my eyes in Carson Wentz. He's coming off a really bad year in Philly, but new situation, back with Frank Reich. He's got a better supporting cast, both in regards to offensive line, but also just like skill players, wide receivers, tight ends, and running back. So I think Wentz is due for a better year, and because of that, the wide receivers are going to benefit, and I think Michael Pittman in his second year is going to take that next step forward and be a true #1 wide receiver. And also, there's plenty of second-year guys I could have included. We're going to talk about Pittman, and now we'll go ahead and move on to #2, Van Jefferson, who I'm a huge fan of, but you could easily include the likes of Brandon Ayuk, Denzel Mims, Laviska Shenault, plenty of other guys into this group as second-year wide receivers taking that step forward, so they're not talked about here. I like Pittman a lot. He had a kind of disappointing rookie year, or, a fine rookie year. I think he's ready to take that next step forward, and I think the same could be said about Van Jefferson. He was kind of wide receiver 4. There was still Josh Reynolds in the building there in LA. Now he's out in Tennessee, so there's, already a role carved out for Van Jefferson. And what I saw from him, he's a super clean, crisp route runner, knows how to get open, create separation for himself, and, with a year of a mitigated smaller role, he's gotten the opportunity to develop and improve as a player. And he's also working in a very talented wide receiver room. Like, even excluding Josh Reynolds, who's now gone, he gets to work every day with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, two very, very good wide receivers. So he's already learning from, two really solid guys. He plays in a great offense under a very creative offensive mind in Sean McVay. And also, similar to what I said about Pittman, there's a QB upgrade in town. Like, they go from Jared Goff, and then they boost up to Matt Stafford. So inherently, better QB play means better wide receiver production. And now that there's a role carved out for Van Jefferson, I liked what I saw last year, only the 19 catches, but I think he takes a step forward this year, and not necessarily going to be the #1 wide receiver in this offense, but this is already an offense that's pretty even across the boards in regards to production. Like Woods, Kupp, pretty evenly split, and back when they had, Brandon Cooks, he was right around the same numbers as the other two. So I think you put Van Jefferson right into the mix. He's going to put up a similar-ish stat line to what you can expect from Kupp and Woods. Third player we'll talk about is Jeff Okudah, another second-year player, and definitely disappointing rookie year. Had a hard time staying on the field, but even when he was on, it wasn't great. But cornerback's one of those positions where it's really rare to be good right away. Like the L'Jarius Sneed, and if you want to include CJ Henderson in there, those impact right away, day one starters at the cornerback position are kind of few and far between. A lot of times it takes at least 1 year, sometimes 2 to 3, to get your feet acclimated, get your feet wet, really, and used to the speed in which the NFL plays, but also the difference in the rules from the college level up to the NFL level, a bunch of different variables. Also, I want to say, there weren't a whole lot of players who, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which is ironic, not a whole lot of players that had a ton of success under Matt Patricia. Like Romeo Okwara might be the only success story, and that was really just last year, where he was able to get it into double digits in regards to sacks. So obviously, new coaching staff coming in, I think that bodes well for the progression of Jeff Okudah. Additionally, he's going to get a ton of reps. If he's healthy, he's going to get a ton of PT, and I'm a big believer in failure is your best teacher. So, he may have some bad moments, he may get cooked, but at the same time, he's going to be learning, and hopefully, at least if you're a Lions fan, he's learning from those mistakes, and he's continuing to get better. So him and Amani Oruwariye are both really young players with upside. Okudah more than Oruwariye, but the point stands nonetheless. Also, Okudah just has the athletic measurables. He checks every box there. He comes from a powerhouse school in Ohio State, DBU, who have produced plenty of really good NFL starters, some stars like players like Marshawn Lattimore, and there's no reason to think Okudah can't get there. So I'm going to buy in what the Lions saw when they drafted him top 5, and I'm going to say a new coaching staff helps push his development along and forward. He'll have his second-year basis, his feet underneath him, acclimated to speed at the NFL game, and he'll just overall be a much better player than he was a year ago. Fourth player we'll talk about, yet another corner, Levi Wallace. And I mean, this is a guy I have been high on. He's about to go into his third season in the league. Look, I mean, walked on to Alabama, ends up earning a scholarship, wins a national championship, goes undrafted, and then becomes, even if you're not a huge believer in Levi Wallace and you think the Bills need to address outside corner, you can look at him and say he's a respectable NFL level caliber kind of guy. The fact that he's made it that far and overcome that many obstacles is just something that stands out to me as this guy's driven, this guy's motivated, he's going to make what he wants happen. So because of that, I don't see why it's unreasonable for the guy who had to walk on to Alabama to then become a national champion, and a guy who had to sign a UDFA contract to get into the league, why can't he become a breakout type of guy in year 3? Plus, he plays for a great organization. Sean McDermott's a fantastic head coach, defensive mastermind, and it also helps, right? Like, we're not asking him like we asked Okudah to be the number 1 guy. Wallace just has to be the number 2. Tre'Davious White got half the field of lock. Like, you don't have to worry about that. So if Wallace can just take that step up and be a really solid number 2, it helps the Bills go from already a really good team to legit Super Bowl contenders in the mix, could really win the AFC. It just comes down to play of Wallace, and I don't see with his history and in the game of football why he can't take that next step forward in year 3. So this might be my bias in just buying into his personality and his story too much, but I also think he's got good numbers to back it up. Here, I'll throw it up on the screen, but if you buy into PFF, highest graded rookie from 2018 over the guys like Denzel Ward, who we all see as a stud. So it'll be up on your screen. If you're a PFF person, this should impress you, and even if you're not, like, this is something worth noting. So I think Levi Wallace is certainly due for a breakout year. Play number 5, Justin Lane for my Pittsburgh Steelers. I almost put Chukwuma Okorafor on here, going in his 3rd year at left tackle. Alejandro Villanueva not coming back. And a lot of times we see tackles, it's not until year 3 or 4 that they take that jump to being, at least an NFL starter type of guy. And they've had Okudah before just as like a swing tackle, fills in when necessary. And maybe now before year 3, they buy into him being ready to be that everyday, week by week, he's a starter at left tackle. And that's why they didn't bring Villanueva back. So I thought about Okudah before, but instead I decided to go Justin Lane just because with the release of Steven Nelson, cornerback is obviously a glaring need, but the way I look at it, I don't think Pittsburgh's going to go tackle in the first 2 rounds, and I'm not entirely sure they go corner. If anything, I think they're more likely to go corner than tackle, so maybe I should have gone Okudah instead of Lane, but I was a huge fan of Justin Lane's coming out of Michigan State. He's got the size that a lot of teams really covet in a modern cornerback. 6'3", super long arms, and the tape at Michigan State is very impressive. I highly encourage you to go check it out. hasn't gotten a whole lot of playing time with Pittsburgh, and that could be kind of a concerning factor because you're like, is this guy not better than Steven Nelson? Could they not find a way to get him on the field and get him a bigger role? But I also see that as somebody who has a big frame and it's just raw. But now here in year 3, now it's, it's time to get going. And I think the role is his, at least as of now. I mean, this could change after the NFL draft, but I liked him at Michigan State. I like his frame. And again, similar to Wallace, Joe Hayden's still in the building. He's not asked to be the number 1. He's simply going to be the number 2. Also, depending on your view of Steven Nelson, especially with Steelers fans, it can be really kind of polarizing. A lot of people saw him as not that good anyways. I was kind of middle of the road to positive on him, but nonetheless, if you didn't like Steven Nelson, Justin Lane inherently, in your eyes, might be an upgrade just because he's not Steven Nelson and you think Nelson was a bum or whatever. So I think Lane, if he puts it together, has the size, has the athletic capability. It just comes down to how well he's been coached up over the last 2 years. But again, you trust the Steelers organization, great coach in Mike Tomlin. You'd like to think he has progressed far enough to be a potential breakout candidate. On to the 6th player we'll talk about, back to the offensive side of the ball, and Irv Smith Jr. This is kind of one of the more obvious ones, right? Like Kyle Rudolph signs with the Giants. This is your time. Like this, they've kind of had Irv Smith in the arsenal, but they haven't like committed to him being the number 1 tight end. They always just find ways to get Rudolph involved, and he was awesome in the red zone, so that kind of poached some of the touchdown numbers for Irv Smith, though. He did have 5 scores last year, which obviously a big notch up from 2 his rookie year. So again, that 3rd-year leap, and I think Irv Smith in the tight end position, this is another example of when that leap could be made. Plays in a really good offense, and it plays in an offense that caters well to a tight end, right? Like, we think about how dominant Kittle is in a run-first scheme in San Francisco, and part of it is it's a great running game, so you have to respect it. Part of it's Kyle Shanahan, really creative offensive mind, and some of it's the player. I think Irv Smith is super athletic, and I'm not saying he's George Kittle, but can be a top 8 to 10 type of talent at the tight end position. I think they have a good offense, plenty of playmakers around him, so he's not even the guy they're keying on. Like Kittle, you might say, is the number 1 factor of that San Francisco offense, that maybe that holds him back. He takes too much attention. For Minnesota, you got to worry about Thielen. You got to worry about Jefferson. Then it's Irv Smith in the passing game. And that's not even factoring in Dalvin Cook as a pass catcher, but that's neither here nor there. So I think that benefits Irv Smith a ton. And, it's not Gary Kubiak anymore. Instead, it's his son as the OC, if memory serves. But if he's anything like his dad, he's going to be a good creative play caller. And this is going to be a run-first team. And if they run the ball off of play action, Irv Smith Jr. is going to have a ton of opportunities. And now that he's the starter, he's the number 1 tight end, I think the numbers are going to follow. Player number 7, K'Lavon Chaisson, another 2nd-year player. And a big part of this is the scheme change, right? Like, fit is such a big deal in football, and it's not always talked about, but it makes an enormous difference. And to me, when K'Lavon Chaisson was drafted by the Jags, I liked the upside of it, but I kind of worried and thought it's a 4-3 defense, and at the time they still had Calais Campbell and Josh Allen, so I was like, you're kind of taking this guy in the 1st round who I think needs more reps. He's raw. He needs to get playing time to get better. You're giving him a rotational piece and a defense that I think he's better suited in a 3-4 than a 4-3. Well, now, obviously no Calais Campbell. He got traded after the draft last year. And now they're switching to a 3-4, so the role is his, and the defense fits him better. He's super athletic and play in open space, so I don't mind him dropping back into coverage. Actually saw a couple of Jags games this year where he almost made really solid plays against running backs in open space as a defender, which is obviously a great sign coming from a rookie defensive end / outside linebacker. I don't know, the Jags kind of tried to use him in different ways as opposed to just hand in the dirt, go get the QB. Nonetheless, I like his athleticism, but you draft him to go after the QB. When him and Josh Allen as the outside linebackers leading the pass rush, what's not to like there? And also, Josh Allen's part of why I think Chaisson has a breakout 2nd year. Everybody's focused on Josh Allen. Everybody knows he's a stud. So because of that, it's one-on-ones on the other side for K'Lavon Chaisson. Again, I'm a Steelers fan. Think Bud Dupree to TJ Watt. I think that kind of effect could be in play. Dupree eventually got better, and I think he's good enough to be his own factor into a game plan. But for right now, relish the one-on-one opportunities and make a name for yourself. Get to the QB, make plays, and then who knows, maybe you become a huge part of the scouting report like I think Bud Dupree became when teams took on the Steelers defense. So really like Chaisson's upside, obviously a first-round talent. Now he's in a defense that suits him a little bit better. I think he's due for a breakout season. On to player number 8, sticking with pass rusher, it's Rashod Gary. And again, a little bit more obvious one, but look, he only played 44% of the Packers snaps last year, 24% in 2019. So the role got a little bigger, and the production followed. 5 sacks last year, and now he looks to be the guy as the starter over Preston Smith, who was disappointing last year. And then Smith, maybe as a rotational guy, fits a little bit better. Maybe he's somebody who benefits from moving in different spots across that defensive, that front seven, that front. But nonetheless, if Rashod Gary gets more playing time, I do see the numbers falling. That doesn't always happen. Like, I kind of thought about putting Andrew Van Ginkel on here, but I am less sold on him in a bigger role, having the production follow, as I am with Rashod Gary. Gary, another first-round talent. Another one of those raw players. You had to be patient. Green Bay is all about this. Wait, develop, patient pays off kind of approach when it comes to the draft. Obviously, Jordan Love, another example of that. That's contentious, but nonetheless, I think Rashod Gary has been a prime example of that. You draft him, got a huge upside. Maybe it takes a year, 2, and maybe now in year 3, he can officially step into that starting role and give you the numbers you're looking for. And look, him as well as Zadarius Smith, I mean, that is a nasty pass rush duo. And you still got Preston Smith as a rotational guy. You still got Kenny Clark. Whew. I mean, that's a good defense. And they got good players in the secondary. Like, that's a good group to be a part of. And I think Rashod Gary, if, say he goes from 24% to 44% last year, if he goes from 44% to 70% snaps played, he could flirt with double digits, and he should flirt with a double-digit sack year. On to player number 9, Damien Harris. And maybe this is another obvious one, but I love what the Patriots have done this offseason. And I think Harris, if he's the number 1 guy, and he can get 20 touches a game, RB1 in fantasy. I mean, I have a hard time thinking he won't be. I mean, I liked what I saw from him last year. 5 yards an attempt. I mean, that's RB1 type of production. Then you look at this offensive line. You get the move to get Trent Brown back. I mean, from tackle to tackle, this is a really solid group. Then you sign Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, who were both really good blocking tight ends as well as good pass catchers. So by virtue of their blocking skills, it's an extension of the offensive line, which is just going to pave huge running lanes for Damien Harris. Like, what's not to like there? Additionally, whether it's Cam Newton or a rookie QB, you got to think the MO for that offense is going to be, let's run the ball first, pass the ball second. I have a hard time thinking Bill Belichick's going to say it's Trey Lance or say it's Justin Fields that falls into his lap somehow. Even if it's one of those two, I don't foresee him saying, okay, we're going to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. We're ready to go. It's going to be a Mahomes type of, guy under center. I think that they're going to try to limit, at least early on, the amount that they are forced to throw the football, and instead it's going to be a ground and pound approach. And I mean, go into a 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, or even 13. I mean, this team drafted 2 tight ends in the 3rd round last year. Maybe they're going to go 1 running back, 3 tight ends. Really get crazy. Nonetheless, I think that bodes really well. If Harris is the number 1 guy in New England, I think he's due for a, dare I say it, Derrick Henry light type of season. But let me know what you think about that. That might be a little too far. That might be too hot of a take. But comment your thoughts and let's have a fun discussion about that. I think Harris is due for a big one, though. Last but not least, Jalen Hurts. This is the one where I was kind of like, well, he should be due for a breakout year. He's a starter. But at the same time, there are plenty of people who don't buy into Jalen Hurts. 4 starts last year, mixed results, 1 big game against a bad Arizona defense. But at least he'll beat up on defenses that he should. That's a good sign, right? And I think the bigger reason I buy into Hurts is where I saw him at when he started his career at Alabama versus where I saw it finish at Oklahoma. He was a way better QB. Like, he's always a dynamic athlete, could do a lot with his legs, but as a thrower of the football, he was inherently much improved when at Oklahoma versus where he started at Alabama. And that progression is something that stands out to me. And I'd go as far as, once he got on the field in Philadelphia, he was an even better quarterback than what I saw at Oklahoma. And that's factoring in, obviously, better competition from, Big 12 defenses to NFL defenses. So I buy into the progression for Jalen Hurts, and I think a QB in the 2nd round is a sign of some sort of commitment. Like, to me, I felt like that was a pick that was made to eventually get Carson Wentz out of the building, similar to what I think the Broncos are going to try to do with Drew Lock. But again, we'll wait for my next mock draft. We'll talk about it then. But reference this point once that mock draft is out. But nonetheless, Hurts is going to be the starter, so therefore he should have obviously better statistical numbers. But I also buy into a new coaching staff. Maybe Doug Peterson wasn't the problem, but nonetheless, messages get stale. And also, even if Peterson wasn't necessarily the problem, he wasn't a part of the solution. Like him and Wentz, if you're going to be a Super Bowl caliber team, you can't have that kind of feud between head coach and QB. Like, that's just not going to work. So he may not have been the big problem, but he necessarily wasn't one at the same time, and he wasn't the solution. So Nick Sirianni comes in, part of that, Frank Reich tree, and I think that's going to be an offensive system that benefits Jalen Hurts. Honestly, I hope that Philadelphia made the decision to hire Nick Sirianni out of their interest in Jalen Hurts. That's how it would work in an ideal world, but I think with this team going wide receiver more than likely in round 1, if not in round 1, definitely in round 2, they're going to get some more weapons around Jalen Hurts. If the offensive line can stay healthy, even if it can, he has the maneuverability and mobility to be able to make things happen with his legs, extend plays, escape the pocket. But ideally, if he has a healthy offensive line, an improved wide receiver group, Dallas Goedert hopefully can give you all 17 next year, he is in a position to prove that he's a franchise guy. And I think that would be a big enough breakout season for Jalen Hurts. I don't think he has to prove, I don't think he has to be a Pro Bowler. I don't think he has to be all pro. He has to prove next year, I'm not a scrub, I can be your franchised QB. And if that happens, that's a breakout-worthy spot. This guy then earned a job in the NFL and at the most important position. So I think that's worthy of breakout consideration. So Jalen Hurts makes my top 10 breakout candidates for next season. Comment who you think I missed, or on my top 10 players, which do you think is least likely to break out? That would be an interesting discussion to have. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that like button. It would mean the world to me. And if you're new to the channel, like sports content, want more, hit that big red subscribe button. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and until next time, my name's Tej, and I'm signing off.
I'm part of the last generation that remembers time of God.